Welcome again to the second part of our meeting. This is biology. We are still on the characteristics of living organisms. We looked at the number of characteristics of living organisms such as reproduction, growth, excretion, sensitivity, movement and locomotion, respiration. And these characteristics, they are both in plants as well as in animals. So this second part of our discussion is basically on distinguishing between living organisms and non-living organisms. What does it mean to distinguish? We are simply talking about the difference. So this word distinguish means difference. Okay. So distinguish means difference. So we want to see the difference between living organisms and non-living organisms. Okay. The living organisms, this part we have living organisms, the whole of this part. Then this part we have non-living organisms. So here it's a line which is cutting the living organisms and the non-living organisms. So we have this line cutting, separating the living organisms as well as the non-living organisms. The first one we have feeding. We talked about feeding, that living organisms, they feed. We talked about how animals feed. We also talked about how plants feed. Okay, for plants we talked about autotrophic nutrition as well as the heterotrophic nutrition. For animals we talked about a mother feeding a baby, even all the people feeding themselves. Okay, now what is the difference between living organisms and non-living organisms? Living organisms, they feed. Non-living organisms, they do not feed. Here example, we can talk about a cow. Okay, let's say a cow. The non-living organisms, they do not feed. You can talk about a stone. No, you've never seen a stone eating. Okay, it's because a stone is a non-living thing. Number two, reproduce. People, they reproduce as animals. Okay, that's why we have babies. Then also that's why we have we've seen cows reproducing, we've seen chickens, we've seen goats, we've seen dogs reproducing. We have also seen trees, a number of trees, okay, through the process called through the type of reproduction called asexual reproduction. So for living organisms, the type of reproduction is called sexual. For plants, is called asexual reproduction. So here we can talk about people. For example, people, they reproduce. Then here do not reproduce. We can talk about stones as well. Okay, stones, they do not reproduce. Okay, then living organisms, they grow. Okay, you example is yourself. You are growing. Maybe tomorrow you'll be 30. After 10 years you'll be 25 years. After another 10 years you'll be 40 years. But when you look at non-living organisms, they do not grow. Okay, because these non-living organisms, they can't grow. For example, we can talk about a metal. Okay, you can talk about a metal here. You can talk about a metal. Okay, you've never seen a metal growing. If a metal is 5 centimeters, the height for a metal is 5 centimeters, it will still be 5 centimeters even after 2 billion years. But for a person or chicken, for example, if we say a chicken, if a chicken today, after 5 years, in fact 5 years, that's too much, after just 2 months, it is even ready to eat. Okay, it is even ready to be eaten. It's because it grows. Okay, we have excretion. People, we remove unwanted products in the body, urinating. Okay, we go to the toilet, we run, we sweat, we breathe out carbon dioxide. But for non-living organisms, they do not excrete. You never see a stone urinating, for example. Here, you never see a stone urinating, you never see a metal sweating, you never see a desk where you sit when you're in class, a desk excreting, urinating, or going to the toilet. No. Then sensitivity. Yes, if you touch a hot pot, you feel heat and you scream, "Napya mami!" You see? Then if, for example, you step on a sharp object, for example, a needle, you scream, "Ah, kanitunga mami!" You see? It's because you have that ability to detect and respond to the stimuli. But you will never find a stone screaming at "Napya mami." That doesn't happen. You never find a stone screaming, "Knife ya ni chaya." No, that doesn't happen. But for you as a human being, that happens. Then for plants, we talked about a flower responding, bending where there is what? Where there is light. Then living organisms are capable of moving, locomotion, and movement. For non-living things, no, they are not capable. They do not locomote or they do not move. If you leave a metal today here, after 10 years, you still find it. If you leave a stone where it can, you still find it unless someone comes and removes it, because they are not capable of locomoting as well as moving. Then respire. Yes, we talked about respiration. Living organisms, both plants and animals, they do respire. For non-living things, they do not respire. Then living organisms, all living organisms have cells. Okay, you have a cell. A cell is simply a basic unit of a living thing. You can even see from the definition the basic unit of a living living thing, that is a cell. Then here for non-living things, they do not have a cell. So we have concluded here on the differences between a living organisms and a non-living organisms. So here I'll just give you an exercise here so that you write, then you are going to submit. So this is exercise, you write, then you send the work. So number 1, apart from stones and metals that I mentioned, name 4 examples of non-living things. Then number 2, write 2 differences. Write 2 differences between the living and non-living things. So this is your exercise, and you need to submit it today before the day ends. Submit, then I'm going to mark. I'm going also to send back to you. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and where you're not clear, you do also the same. Just inbox me, text me, then I'll attend to your question. For now, we end here.